is Jerry Dubin, who is the regional representative for UCLA. First off, I have a little story here for you that I thought I'd tell this evening. It seemed very appropriate. I noticed a lot of you people were a little shook up coming into the airport. I'd like to straighten up one thing. That wasn't fog. That was good old Southern California smog that was blocking the airport. Anyway, there's this Mrs. Valente, and Mrs. Valente had a problem. Her husband was dying of an incurable disease, which is very tragic. And she called the doctor, and the doctor comes over to look at her husband. Husband, very ill. He looks him over and says, well, this is very serious. Your husband has about a 50-50 chance of surviving, Mrs. Valente. The only thing we can think of is to operate, and this is probably about a $5,000 operation. Oh, she just about fell off the chair. This was just too expensive. So he says, well, Miss Valente, if you let us do this operation on television, there won't be any charge. Well, this was great. Fine. She said, okay. And the next day she was at the beauty parlor, and she went to get a new dress, and she was getting all dolled up for this television debut. And she comes down to the studio, and the director brings her out and says, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mrs. Valente. This is her husband over there. He's not speaking right now, but that's her husband. And she's all excited, and she welcomes the television audience and everything, and she's just hamming it up completely, just enjoying herself. And the operation's going on, of course, and she's talking, telling about how she came about this big event. Well, finally, it's the end of the show. The director comes back on stage, and he's just really downcast, and he says, Mrs. Valente, very serious things just happened. The operation was a failure, and your husband's passed on. Well, he was bracing himself to catch her when she passed out, and she looked at him, then she looked at the TV camera and said, well, that's a showbiz. I tried. Anyway, don't laugh. I'll try better this evening, after. Right now, I'd like to introduce, again, Jerry Dubin, the regional representative, who will give the introduction for the Vice Chancellor. Jerry?
No jokes. I'll leave it all to him. Don't. If I were addressing a group of UCLA students, all I would have to say is, may I present Vice Chancellor Charles E. Young, and I think that would be sufficient, for you would know him and you would know of him. But since not all of you are from UCLA, I would like to just take a few moments to totally disregard the admonition to me to be brief and tell you a few words about Mr. Young, Dr. Young. Dr. Young is a native of both California and the University of California at Los Angeles. He was born in San Bernardino and received his master's and his doctorate at UCLA in 1957 and 1960, respectively. From 1960 to 1963, he served as an assistant professor of political science here at UCLA, while also serving as assistant chancellor in 1962 and 1963. You don't have to write these dates down. In 1963, he was appointed Vice Chancellor, Administration for UCLA. The honors and awards bestowed upon Dr. Young are numerous, one of which was the American Political Science Association Congressional Fellowship, Washington, D.C. for 1958-59. But I think Dr. Young's favorite award, if not for name similarity, just for word meaning, was the award given to him by the Westwood Junior Chamber of Commerce in 1962. I present to you now 1962's Young Man of the Year, Dr. Charles E. Young.
That's an overwhelming introduction. Bill Ackerman was saying earlier that when he was talking about how long we might plan to go and what the rest of the evening was like, and I commented to him that if he was planning on your being kept here until 8:15 because of my speech, he was laboring under a misapprehension, because my speech wasn't about to last that long, and he said that Jerry's introduction would. I didn't believe I didn't believe it then, but I do now. You'll have to excuse a couple of things this evening. In the first place, those of you at least who come from from an institution to the north known as the farm to many, both there and elsewhere, will have to forgive my stomp Stanford button. I hope that I hope that I'm not proven wrong come Saturday night when the test of all this optimism will have been will be made. When Jerry said that he wouldn't have to introduce me or say much about me other than Vice Chancellor Charles E. Young, and there's a story behind that. Wouldn't have to say much other than Vice Chancellor Charles E. Young to UCLA students, I thought he was going to go on and say some of the things that they knew about me. Some of the things they remember me for. And I think they would probably have most of their information from the Daily Bruin, and I'm not at all certain that I want to be remembered for the things that I mentioned for and talked about in the Daily Bruin from time to time. Well, I want to again take an opportunity, as I'm sure a lot of people have done already and will do during the course of your 2-day stay here, or really 2.5-day stay, I guess, to welcome you here to UCLA on behalf of the administration, on behalf of the university. We're happy that you were able to come with us, to come here to be with us, and we hope your conference will be an interesting one and a valuable one, that you will leave here with something more than you came, and that all of you will have left something here as well. Because if one can't learn from each other at conferences like this, then there's really no reason for having them, I suppose. I've quite often in the last few years been put in the position I'm in at the moment, which is that of a non-professional talking to people who are professionals or who are at least far closer to the kind of activity that is being talked about than I am. It's awfully difficult to know what to talk about to a group such as this. I'm called upon from time to time to address a convention or a meeting of the Association of Foreign Student Advisors, or a meeting of the Association of Deans of Students, or an association of almost anything. And they always want you to talk about their subject, which is what the people have come to listen to and come to talk about and learn about, obviously. And it's a little embarrassing sometimes to be asked to stand up and talk about the subject that they're the professionals in, and you are not. So what you try to do, obviously, is to find some aspect of the topic which you perhaps are at least a little better able, or theoretically might be in a little better position to be able to talk about. I've tried to do that this evening in the talk that I am going to give to you, which is the university and the union. And perhaps to talk a little bit more about the university and the role that the union plays within the context of the university than others might do. To do so, I think it might be useful to start in with a brief discussion or a brief comment or two about what the student union is, in effect defining it. Almost everyone who's been connected with a university in any way has at one time or another made a stab at defining the educational philosophy or the meaning of the college union. Not the least of those who have been active in this process of interpretation is your own organization. And the definition which I derive from your association is one which I think is a very excellent one, and that is the development of persons as well as intellects. The beauty of this definition, as I see it, is its breadth, for there is a danger in trying to define too specifically anything that is connected with a university, and that danger is the tendency to live within the definition once you've derived it, to restrict our thinking, to stabilize operations, to close our minds to new ideas, to new approaches, and to new problems in an ever-changing environment. In other words, whatever our stated policy goals may be, they must always be subject to the widest possible interpretation and to immediate revision should the changing character of the times and the goals of the university call for this latter drastic type of action. The union, no more than the university, can ever remain static. As the child of the dynamic parent, the university, it too must be dynamic. As a key member of the academic community, it is dedicated to leadership no less than are the various schools and colleges which comprise the university itself. As Chancellor Murphy stated, at the time this union building was proudly dedicated, this structure must become a positive force in the lives of all students, faculty, alumni, and friends, providing on an informal basis the most meaningful kinds of intellectual and cultural as well as social enrichment. The key word in all of this, from my point of view, is the word meaningful. For what is meaningful today may not be tomorrow. For example, as UCLA is experiencing its most dramatic proportional growth in graduate enrollments, those aspects of union operations catering to the needs of the graduate student must be given more and more emphasis. This has meaning in the kind of bookstore we operate, in the kind of atmosphere we try to promote in the coffee rooms and lounges, and in the amount and kinds of space we allocate for semi-academic discussion. It goes without saying, if I read this correctly, that as graduate enrollments increase, the student store will devote more space to rare books and less to freshman beanies. More subtly, however, as students and faculty tend on the whole toward a meeting ground in academic interests and level of achievement, that is, as the number of PhD candidates increases, and as the undergraduate curricula allows for more and more independent research and direct faculty consultation, it becomes incumbent upon the student union to develop more of the intellectual coffee house atmosphere, an atmosphere conducive to informal intellectual argumentation. Finally, as the campus becomes more and more residential, the union must expand its purely recreational offerings to provide the proper restorative and social developing dimensions to student life. In simplest terms, the union does not exist in a vacuum. It is rather an integral part of the university, an extension of the schools and colleges that make up the academic core. While it serves the whole academic community, it is yet not enough for the union simply to respond to needs as they are presented by some administrative or academic arm of the institution. The union must provide its share of the leadership. It must reach out to the people it serves. It is uniquely equipped and uniquely responsible for providing on its own initiative many of the vital educational experiences which cannot and can never be fully realized in the classroom. In a way, the university asks the student union to be all things to all men. The reason for this is simple. The university itself is asked to be just about that by its students, its community, its alumni, its state, by all men in all their diversity. The union, like the university, must be steadfast in its purpose to educate while pushing back the frontiers of knowledge. To do this, neither can waver from the ideal of the free marketplace of ideas. As such, neither can stagnate for a second. Discoveries are made, new knowledge is applied, history progresses and society changes, and always the university is in the lead, for this is the university's role in society. At times, the university will be way ahead of the pack, and these are its most exciting and at the same time its most trying times, because they're the times that can be very difficult for the university administrator, for the faculty member, for the member of the Board of Regents, and yes, for the union director. The greater the progress gap between the university and the community, the more misunderstood the university must be by the public. The greater the misunderstanding, the more violent the criticism. Yet the university and the union must withstand the criticism, must hold firm to that ideal of academic freedom. For if the university wavers, society wavers, and if the university falls behind, progress stops. Why involve the union so deeply in the destiny of the university? Because it is not only an integral part of the university, but can and must be one of the university's most visible parts. At UCLA, the union provides our most prominent forum for public controversy. It provides the setting for the Distinguished Speakers Program. And as an aside, I think a program, the name of which possibly deserves to be changed, but still a program which is a very important one, and one which we feel has added a tremendous amount of breadth and depth to the academic, indeed the total program of the university. From the stage of the grand ballroom in regard to this Distinguished Speaker Program, from the stage of the grand ballroom issue forth some of the most controversial statements uttered by some of the most controversial figures to appear on campus or anywhere else in this country for that matter. This is as it should be, for the provision of a public forum which crosses academic disciplines is one of the most valuable contributions the university can make to the union can make to the university. Because of its flexibility, because of its apparent, if not real, separateness, the union is uniquely equipped to provide a full spectrum of all kinds of controversial discussion that stimulates critical thinking and develops in the student the capacity for making sound, independent judgments. The classroom can and certainly does provide much of this kind of intellectual ferment. It would fail if it was not doing so. But the classroom, by its very nature, must be limited in scope to the discipline at hand and limited in audience to those who enroll. The union is not so limited, and therefore is the ideal administrative unit for bringing the widest range of ideas to the widest possible audience. As a uniquely equipped marketplace for ideas, the union's responsibilities go far beyond the provision of a stage for mass audiences. It should provide in its several meeting rooms a continuing series of stimulating and provocative gatherings, sponsored by the union itself as well as by others. Students and faculty who, in all probability, would not have the opportunity for face-to-face contact, not only with each other, but also with non-university leaders, can be brought together in the less formal union environment as no other university facility. The union can and must be a place where intellectual cross-fertilization is not only accommodated, but stimulated. In its dedication to the universality of the search for knowledge, the union matches the highest ideals of the academic community. In emphasizing the intellectual, and in a political year I should include the emotional, I do not mean to minimize the importance of the purely recreational function of the union. Opportunities for sheer relaxation, for the testing of physical and mental skills in competitive games, for developing the all-important social skills and graces, must be provided in abundance. These are necessary ingredients in the total educational picture. Even here, however, the union director must be prepared for change. Vogues in recreation are capricious and in many respects as capricious in many respects as women's fashions, and today's bowling alley might well be tomorrow's curling rink. My topic tonight has been the Union and the University. After having made the notes from which this brief talk grew, I began to wonder if it might not have been more accurate to have selected the title, "The Union is the University." It is certain, at least, that the two cannot be separated. Each would have to invent the other if either found itself alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Young, for a very certainly inspiring speech. I'd now like to introduce the host chairman once more, Larry Lindberg, who will give you the conference briefing. Larry?
I would like to go over some of the, there will be some changes within the program itself. Right. This should be marked in your brochure. I would like to mention, aside from the program notes, that these badges that we are wearing, the ACU badges, are the only means we have of recognition of delegates, and that all delegates must wear their badges at all times for entrance into events because they are being policed. Now, if you're ready, especially with our enforced, correct. Something about suppression. Beginning Thursday evening, 8:30 p.m., I have underlined the Nominations and Site Committee meeting. Now, I will tell you when there is going to be a change, but I want to underline some of the events that are coming up just because of their importance. Now, this will be held in the Student Union 2408. At 9 o'clock this evening, there will be a staff social, 216 Tiger Tail Road, Mr. Ackerman's home. And then at the same time, there will be a student social in the Student Union Co-op. Coop. Beginning at 7:30 tomorrow, there's a regional board meeting in Student Union room 3517. At 9 o'clock, an introduction to college union programs, Clark Santini, University of Nevada. That'll be held in the Grand Ballroom. Now, at 10 o'clock, under the program sessions, on-campus publicity given by the University of Nevada, it's the fourth program down, will be held Saturday morning at 10 o'clock in room 3564 of the Student Union. It is switching with the role of the advisor given by the University of Southern California. That's 10 o'clock. At 11:45, there is a no-host luncheon. The sessions will break at 11:30. We are to be in line at the sessions, after the sessions for the luncheon by 11:45, on the nose. 1:30 in the afternoon, we have the general session. The speaker is Robert Alexander. That'll be held in the Grand Ballroom. 2:30 in the afternoon, the sessions, YA Union. There will be one change. The commercial services, the last column, second one down, given by the University of California, Davis, will be held in the Grand Ballroom, not the 2408. That'll be held in the Grand Ballroom, commercial services. At 4 o'clock, we will have a visual analysis of student union operations. This will be not a tour. It'll be an analysis of the student union. It will be quite different from a tour in every aspect. All delegates will meet at the information desk at 4 o'clock. And I think you'll be quite pleasantly surprised the way it has been set up. It's very well done. At 5 o'clock, there'll be a site committee meeting at the Zodiac Room, Bel Air Sands Hotel. At 7 o'clock in the evening, there's a conference dinner dance at the Bel Air Hotel. I would like now a show of hands for the number of people who are going to have a fish dinner. Would you raise your hands, please, so we could get a count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Draw a fish on your bed.
Okay, thank you. 9.
Your hands will be
No.
stamped.
Saturday morning at 7:30, we'll have a regional board meeting, Student Union 2408. And at 9 o'clock, there will be one man's case against college unions, a critical analysis of the college union by a university administrator. This will be our own Dean of Men, Dean Bruger from UCLA. This will be held in the Grand Ballroom. At 10 o'clock, the relationships sessions will begin at 10 o'clock. There is no change there except for the switching of the role of the advisor. At 12, there will be a luncheon. The speaker will be Dr. John Vandewater, personal goal setting and the development of individual competence. At 4 o'clock, another site committee meeting, the last one, room 2408 in the Student Union. And at 6 o'clock, the farewell banquet. Where do we go from here? Guest speaker, Alfred Ellingson, president of the ACU International. That's all. Just remember the changes of the rooms. If there's any questions, you can get information at any time at the information desk on the first level. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Before we break up, I just had a few things I'd like to mention to you. Number one, again, there will be a short meeting this evening, not of the site committee, we're putting that off a day, but of the nominations committee, which includes Jack Montgomery. At this time also, I'd like to introduce my two vice presidents who have done a very excellent job for me. It's Jack Montgomery from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And also Richard Avanzino from the Cal Med Center, who's in charge of the conference evaluation. We are also requesting that everyone think of individuals from their schools as possibilities for running for the regional offices. We want to get the best possible people that we can. So if you have anyone you wish to nominate from your group, please see Jack. Otherwise, we'll be taking nominations from the floor tomorrow morning. Now, this meeting tomorrow morning is critical. The buses will leave from the Bel Air Sands Hotel at 7:15. I know it's early, but we will be having coffee, orange juice, and donuts and everything thanks to UCLA, so there will be some incentive, a little food. Aspirins I'll be handing out. But be there, because I just can't eat all those donuts myself. And that will be in the Student Union building here, room 2408. It's in the program, and it's really mandatory for your regional representative to attend. If you do not have a regional representative, select a student, not victim, but a student from your group to please attend this meeting. And also there will be the second meeting and the final one when we'll vote for the regional officers on Saturday morning. So those two things are real important. And also this 11:30 break, I'm emphasizing this for Mr. Ackerman again. This is tomorrow. The discussion groups must break. Otherwise, you'll be trampled by 20,000 students going to lunch. So it's up to you. You have to be there at 11:30 to beat the rush. That's about all I had, and I'm sure we'll have a very outstanding conference. Thank you.
If all the delegates will come forward and be seated at the forward tables, Mr. Santini's been delayed, and he will be coming up right now.
How many total delegates do we have? Do we know yet that
Uh,
actually arrived?
This could be found out very easily downstairs.
Huh?
Information.
Oh, you don't
June
know-
or
you haven't
Patty?
heard yet, huh?
No, I had rough figures, but because they're having these people who are coming up, you know.
Casuals. Yeah.
Mr. Clark Santini. I will keep it short because of the time factor. Clark Santini is a native of Reno, Nevada, where he has attended local schools, and he has a background in scouting and debated extensively during high school and college. I would like to add that this seems almost a prerequisite in union activity, especially in the programming end. Upon entering the University of Nevada, he became affiliated with Alpha Tau Omega fraternity and served within his house as House Senator and Homecoming Skid Director for 2 years. He was elected to the Board of Directors at Jack Travis Union and served as Music Chairman and Lecturers Chairman. In 1963, he was elected President of the Union. Clark is a pre-law student with concentration in speech and political science. I would like now to present Clark Santini.
Thank you for a flattering introduction. I am somewhat surprised as far as the introduction goes, because I can remember last year when I spoke before a similar group for the Resolutions Committee. I was introduced by another fellow by the name of Bob Alexander, who I'm not sure whether he's here this morning or not, but I do feel committed to acknowledge Mr. Alexander. Many of you may not have seen him here at the conference so far, here at Los Angeles, because he's here incognito. He's sober. But I don't mean to disparage Bob at all, because I like him. He's a tremendous guy. He's a very absorbing guy. Sponges off of everybody. Nonetheless, as I say, I don't want to use Mr. Alexander as merely a gimmick or a method of getting around delivering my little speech this morning. Although if I did, it would be the greatest service he rendered the ACU since he began working with it. But I don't want to spoil his perfect record, so I will proceed here. I do have a couple of newsy notes as such I'd like to bring to your attention in the way of resolutions and whatnot. First of all, I think in most discussions I've heard of the student union, much of what I've considered to be wrong with these discussions is that they seem to lack all perspective of exactly where the student union exists and to whom the student union is really catering to. As to where the union, the time and the place that we find ourselves now on the 50th anniversary of the student union, it's a presidential year. It's not only a presidential year, which is of secondary importance in consideration of the fact that this is the time of the year that the new cars come out. Now, most reporters that I have noticed in the California, several of the Eastern papers, have overlooked one of the most interesting developments for the new car lines this year that students are returning to campus with. Most of them, I say with the exception of Mr. Herb Cain, who offered this bit of vital information to his readers in his column by outlining the 6 brands of new American automobiles available to drivers that are interested. There's, of course, the new Goldwater Dream with 4 gears in reverse, the LBJ, which is a sharp little roadster, but it doesn't have any headlights. Between Mr. Goldwater and no lenses in his glasses and President Johnson without any lights, I don't really think either of them can see where they're going, but be it as it may, I think we have 2 candidates that are both ready and willing. All we have to do is find one that's able. The best... I'll let J. Edgar Hoover hear that, boy. Well, I mean, one of the best models, of course, is the Bill Miller Red Menace, which you can park under beds You see if that happens to be the case. Or this sporty Denison Ketchel with its white snide walls. And then that model that I know you Californians will appreciate the most is the Salinger Super Snipe, which of course holds the Virginia to California speed record. I bring that to your attention for anybody who's in the car market. The only other matter of general interest I'd like to bring to your attention at this time concerns a resolution I would like you to support as staunchly as you can and as effectively, depending on your methods and whatnot. And it simply involves naming annually a man of the year in the world of student unions. I have a candidate I'd like to offer for your suggestion. Me? No. I just thought of that. This fellow happens to be an entertainer, but he's an entertainer that I think personifies so much of the activities side of the student union that I think he'd be worth our attention. It again was a noted columnist who brought Mr. John Gary to my attention and had this to say of him. Singer John Gary is also a champion athlete as well as an entertainer. Among his athletic accomplishments include bowling, billiards, tennis, archery, skin diving, and skydiving. Mr. John Gary explained yesterday why he preferred archery to all of them. I quote Mr. Gary and offer this as the testimonial for his qualification. Mr. Gary said, as to explaining his preference for archery, "Well, you look silly going into the woods with a girl and a bowling ball." It seems to strike the spirit of much of the union movement there, I think. Aside from the perspective of time and place from which to look at student unions, the factors of the students themselves, I think, are worthy of our concern, and they are an active bunch, with or without our help. That august magazine of fair and noble journalism, Time magazine, commented on some of these activities in a resume of the 63-64 school year. Time had this to say: "At Princeton, where rioters went berserk last spring, the students have developed their Saturday night cult of the grubby, dungareed dancers twisting in once elegant clubs. Bizarre idiocy prevails elsewhere. At LSU, co-eds recently launched a drawers raid on the men's dormitory, and 2 Cornell football fraternity teams played a 30-hour touch football game, score 644 to 538. At Columbia, students staged an all-cause protest rally with marchers brandishing such signs as Hoover in 64 and We Shall Overrun. The University of Chicago's pitiful attempt to revive football was protested by purists waving ban the ball signs in Greek. Now, with the trivialities dispensed with, in the short time I have left, I would like to cram my little 30-minute presentation here into a conclusion. What I wanted to try and paint for you, metaphorically at least here, was a picture of the 2 faces of the student union that we working in the student union have certainly been aware of, and that the critics and supporters from outside the student union have continually been reminding us about if we should ever forget. Time magazine, again, is I think the most qualified in some peculiar ways to offer one of these faces, and as Time magazine recently put it, the center of the collegiate activity is not the time we are in or the students themselves, not at all. As Time says, the hub of the U.S. campus today is neither lab, library, gym, or classroom, but a huge funhouse called the Student Union that blends the looks of a USO, a Howard Johnson's, and the old Havana Hilton with the dreams of Manhattan's Lincoln Center. Time goes on to take a jab at one of Region 15's own unions. To form a more perfect union, Stanford has opened a new $26 million Tresitter Memorial Union, a handsome hacienda that does wonders for the university's architecture, which is mostly a blend of early Southern Pacific and neo-Romanesque. So much for Time magazine. On the other side, to jump along here, America offered an interesting article on education in general, and specifically had a few paragraphs to say that it introduced under the title of More Friendly Relations. America had this to say: "Time was when a college professor knew personally and somewhat intimately all the students enrolled in his courses. He could call each one by name without consulting his class book. He could designate each one's hometown, and he could often trace each one's family connections to the third or fourth generation. Time was also when the typical college student was well acquainted not only with all the members of his own class, but with most of the other students on the campus. Now conditions have changed. It is at present rare indeed to find an instructor who claims a personal acquaintanceship with more than a few of the individuals who enroll in his courses. And as for the students themselves, many sit side by side in lecture and quiz sections without ever knowing or inquiring the name of the individuals at their right or their left. In fact, it is an event worthy of remarking if any student gives formal recognition to his seatmates by so much as a nod or a word of salutation when they converge at the classroom door. Why is this so? Doubtless, several reasons enter into the situation. In the first place, the enrollments in college and often in given courses are excessively large, and little opportunity is therefore furnished for developing friendly relations of any sort. Then, too, there is little unity of purpose or of academic interest of life purpose or of academic interest among students today as compared with what was the case a generation or so ago. Now universities are composed of many schools and colleges, and these in turn are split into many departments of educational specialization. Furthermore, the elective system operated to throw many undergraduates and graduates, freshmen and seniors, into the same educational sections, albeit no other bounds of interest tie them together. Then, too, among many instructors, particularly among the younger men, the notion prevails that research is about the only kind of work that counts towards scholarly recognition and hence personal promotion in rank and salary. For these, therefore, teaching is more or less a bore, to be gotten through with as quickly as possible each day, while conferences with students, and indeed the showing of any human interest in them whatever, are a waste of time and needless." The article concludes, "The end of all liberal education is character, or the development of an integrated personality. But character develops best from the interplay of minds, and not by passively subjecting oneself to formal classroom procedures only." I feel that is one of the best cases for the Hearthstone Family Center extracurricular activities that the union promotes. That is not, to me, the only significance of this particular article. What struck me most was its timeliness, for its date is not January 18th, 1964, but January 18th, 1936. With these two faces of the student union posed, I would nonetheless like to take a side in favor of supporting a greater concentration of our own interests in the developments of the educational programming and bending a more informative emphasis on the programs offered within the unions. The growth in the last 50 years of the student union movement in this country has been phenomenal. In 1946, there were 90 unions in this country. Today, there are over 700. To illustrate specifically some of the examples of how this development has come about, the $5 million Loeb Student Union of New York University includes typical accommodations like bowling alleys, billiard balls, lounges, theaters, hotel rooms, and restaurants. Tulane, some of the extraordinary facilities, Tulane possesses a swimming pool that features poolside push-button snack service. The University of Utah is able to offer its students a view of the Rockies and the Salt Lake from their panoramic dining room atop the Union. The University of Pennsylvania at Pittsburgh greets its visitors to campus in the Student Union's marble-pillared main lounge. As phenomenal and, I think, important as this growth has been, I think anybody who is intelligently concerned about the future of the student union movement would have to admit that most of our attention has been to the facilities and the buildings of the student union instead of to making the student union a part of the educational program that our statement of purpose in the role of the student union suggests we are. Specifically, for instance, I think an art show, such as we have in the back of this ballroom, lends an attractive aura to most any student union. But its educational value is almost nil unless, for the average student, unless it is accompanied by the extra information and analysis necessary for that average student to understand what he's looking at. The same is true of lecture and music programs. To save a lot of extra verbiage, Igor Stravinsky once said it best when he said, "To listen is an effort, but to hear has no merit. A duck also hears." The alternatives that can be offered, aside from just offering worthwhile programs, is to offer worthwhile programs that have this informative slant. Two comments by people who have worked in the student union movement much longer than I and perhaps most of you here this morning. that would support this, just to get your attention to getting the union to a state of whole development, which I think, again, is a matter of emphasizing the union's part in the educational program of the college. A gentleman by the name of Trevor Holefield had this to say in evaluating that third point of the student union role. The union is part of the educational program. At a Eugene conference in Oregon, Mr. Holefield had this to say: "If the union is part of the educational program, I think we have failed. To support this, I must draw from the experience at our own union on the University of Saskatchewan campus. Here, when approving and finalizing our budget, we deleted budget items for 3 different committees. There was simply no student interest in these to warrant their appearance on the budget. These committees were activities, music, and art. This signifies something, and that is, we have lost contact as an educational program and have become a playhouse." The explanation to this third paragraph says, and I quote, I'm quoting him, "Through its various boards, committees, and staff, it provides a cultural, social, and recreational program. Note," Mr. Holefield goes on, "here that culture is first, then social, followed by recreational last." He feels, Mr. Holefield continues, "It is not our duty to provide bowling alleys, swimming pools, and the like for the student population. Rather, we must take an inner look and determine whether the cultural aspect as stated in the role of the union is being satisfied." I have attempted initially to put into perspective where I feel our duties lie as far as the recreational and similar activities are concerned, because I think we do have an obligation there. One of the chancellors of the University of California put it best. I think the most can be said for it, when he described it very well in a speech offered at the conference at Berkeley as release from regimentation. Mr. Holefield, I would hope, could be used to offer the necessary impetus to get students in particular, and whatever staff members wanted to lend support, to the sophistication of the programs we offer, so that they offer some educational, so they impart some educational benefit instead of just offering an entertaining experience. I have one specific idea, instead of just sitting here and chanting the criticisms that most of us are all aware of if we've associated with student unions more than a month, that I offer in that spirit. It is just one idea. It is in the spirit of the personal involvement that the union can offer students, and that the lasting benefits that will come from that type of involvement, instead of just passively sitting and hearing, will be of much more benefit to the student than if he just listens to Peter, Paul, and Mary on Saturday night. This idea, in short, is a proposal to undertake the development of a college union national debate tournament. I had planned to outline the mechanics of the tournament, and then to ask those of you from the schools within Region 15 who are not interested just in a sympathetic way, that'd be a good idea, we ought to do that someday, but are interested in the let's get it done, or just let's begin, are the ones I wanted to appeal to particularly, and appeal to in the sense of I have outlined the idea to you here this morning, and with the help of Mr. Steve Gomes from Nevada, who is chairmaning a session Saturday morning, and has granted me a half hour or whatever is left after he gets done with his presentation, to talk with those of you who are interested in promoting this college union national debate tournament, to come to that session on campus publicity, I believe it's called. Pick up the little propaganda sheet on it, and hope to undertake this beginning. A small sketch would generally boil down to this. Regional debate tournaments would be undertaken during the fall semesters. The national would be held in the spring. The spring semester previous to that school year, the national would have announced the college union debate topic. One of the attractive features that I think makes it worth your consideration is that, hypothetically, as I've outlined it here, the topic would be decided by polling interested students, anybody that drops their little suggestion in the box, on your own individual campuses. Tabulate the results of that poll, send it to your regional director, he makes the same tabulation, sends it on to national, and then a debate topic is picked that does not reflect faculty or staff or Delta Sigma Chi or anybody else's majority interest, but the students on campuses in 1964, 5, 74, 5, etc., hoping, I would offer, to result in a little more subsequent student following, although the work is still left to the individual student unions to set it up. I think one of its hopeful parts is the fact it doesn't involve too many people. All you have to do is get yourself a debate team from your own board, from your speech department, and then send them to a regional. Now, if the regional's near your school, it'll probably cost you nothing. If it's not, that's the minimum expense you're going to have. Then if you would happen to win the regional, you would have to send him to a national, which might alternate on a east, midwest, west basis to make fair distribution of the travel burden. And if he won national, you would have plenty coup in your student union head banner. But there are, I think, additional advantages from just the communication that could come nationwide, the skeleton of communication that might be able to blossom into student unions throughout the South, making contact with student unions throughout the North, and communication in that area, I should hope, wouldn't need to be given too strong an argument at this time. In conclusion, that session tomorrow morning is entitled On Campus Publicity, and will be held on the third floor in SU 3564. 3564. And then any of you that are interested are encouraged to come. There's a tremendous bit of idealism behind one gambit like that, and that it's idealistic mostly when you extrapolate it into the future and say, well, what's the worth of students that might be interested as participants, or what would be the worth to the campus at large as spectators to such a program? And you inevitably end up in the political arena of, well, it might help them become a little more concerned as citizens in accepting the social and political responsibilities they have to face once they escape or leave college. This is probably the case. My most immediate interests are, it is part and parcel of the emphasis I think most of our programs should be given, and that is getting to the minds of the students on the campuses where these student union exists, trying to whet their mental appetites instead of perhaps 90% of the activities are more concentrated toward their physical appetites, whether it's from the dining commons to the undulating pulsations of a good jazz group. This, I think, the student union has been tremendously successful for, and as I say, I want to give it merit where merit is deserved. But where the work for the future, I think, lies is in making the same attack on extracurricular use of their minds for their own best welfare. A couple of comments on this will suffice as far as I'm concerned. Every now and then a man comes along who believes in this type of idealism, believes in it so much more than he's got the right answer or, come follow me. He believes mostly in just trying as hard as he can. And in that effort, that person picks up a little of you. It is on that basis that I'm presumptuous enough to invoke the memory of this particular man for this particular cause. I won't go so far as to use my own words, though, for it was Emmett John Hughes that editorialized in a fashion that brings this spirit to mind following the assassination of President Kennedy in the December 2nd issue of Newsweek. And he concluded that very good editorial by saying of President Kennedy, he belonged uniquely to us above all in his joyful passion for political life. For by this he proved he knew the root and genius of his nation. He knew it to be conceived and dedicated to the matchless political art of governing men in freedom. He knew also that his nation was born not of an accident of history, but of an act of intelligence, the triumph of men who studied seriously, spoke articulately, wrote fearlessly, debated rationally, and concluded intelligently. He strove to do as they, and he had some of this on his mind and ready for his utterance as he met death. The speech he would never deliver warned against hucksters of the seemingly swift and simple solutions, and he would firmly insist that, quoting Mr. Kennedy, America's leadership must be guided by the lights of learning and reason. To the extent that we might participate in promoting those lights outside of the class as well as inside, I think it is worthy of the student union's attention. I'll skip the rest of that. The concluding note I'd like to leave in your minds is simply this. The 50th anniversary of such an organization as the ACU, I think, is only worth considering in the sense of, well, not even so much what's going to happen in the next 50 years, but what's going to happen in the next 5. Not just getting together for an excuse to miss classes for the students and entertaining diversions for the staff, or to sit around and pat ourselves on the back for things we have accomplished in the past. But seriously, actively, what are we going to do? If not have accomplished by the next time we get together next year, at least say we have undertaken something, so that when you folks come back, or those students here that will not graduate come back to the conference next year, you can say, well, we've actually begun something. I have this debate tournament idea in mind, but that's just one idea. There ought to be a flotilla of ideas pouring out from all corners as far as my own personal feelings are about the thing, but this is only the type of thing I'm trying to promote. Whether it happens or not is solely your concern. I am trying to promote it because I feel herein lies the real future of the student union movement. The future, as far as the student union earning and justifying its place on academic campuses across the United States as an instrument and as a center for an extension of education, and for an extension of personal growth, and not just a temple of escape. Thank you.
Richard Drummond has just a few notes to underline some things that were brought up last night, and then we'll break for the sessions.
The main thing is for the discussion group leaders for this morning's session to remind them again that we must break at 11:30. And that basically is it. We can break right now for the 10 o'clock session of your choice. Thank you. Good job, Parker.
Robert Alexander. He's the director of the Guy S. Milbury Union on the San Francisco Medical Center campus of the University of California. By way of background, I'd like you to know that Mr. Alexander graduated from the University of Illinois with a bachelor's degree in political science. While an undergraduate, he was active in union-sponsored events, and in his senior year, he served as a student member of the Illinois Union Board. His graduate study was in the field of community recreation. From 1952 to 1955, he served as assistant to the social director of the Illinois Union Board. From 1955 to 1957, he served as assistant to the director and coordinator of student activities at Kansas State University. In October of 1957, Mr. Alexander was named director of the Guy S. Milbury Student Union. His 12-year participation in the affairs of the Association of College Unions International has included a number of association positions and more recently, a 3-year term regional representative for the now divided Region 11. In 1961, he was selected to attend a special ACU-sponsored seminar at Harvard University. At present, Mr. Alexander is a member of the ACU International Executive Committee and will act as host director for the ACU conference to be held in San Francisco in April. In 1962, Mr. Alexander was presented with the Award of Merit as a distinguished alumnus from the alumni of the University of Illinois. I take great pleasure in presenting the distinguished director of the Guy S. Milbury Union.
Thank you very much, Larry. And if Bill Ackerman is here, and I see that he is, I'd like very much to extend to you, Bill, and to your good wife, on behalf of all of the staff members gathered here, our sincere thanks for taking such excellent care of us last night at 216 Tiger Tail. From what I hear this morning, the students found diversion in small informal buzz groups, and the manager of the Bel Air Sands had his own tiger by the tail. Quite contrary to the printed program, and to set your minds at relative ease, let me open these brief comments with an assurance that I have neither the intention nor the physical stamina to talk for more than 15 or 20 minutes. It has been said that a set of remarks to be eternal need not be everlasting. Apparently, my mission this afternoon is to serve without straw hat, cane, or portfolio as a pitchman for the International Association of College Unions. This is a somewhat difficult task and perhaps a somewhat unnecessary task, since it has been estimated that there are some 700 college unions in the world, and our association counts with pride to a roster of just over 600 member institutions. However, and hopefully for the mutual benefit of present and potential members, I'd like to briefly outline some of the association's work, with special emphasis on some of its lesser-known services and current projects. Surely there are few who are unacquainted with the official role of the college union statement, passages of which were quoted last night by Vice Chancellor Young in his eloquent and most laudatory address. This statement, in printed form, is displayed in the main entranceway of many of our buildings, including the Milbury Union, and can undoubtedly be found most frequently in some paraphrased form, as a part of the constitution of 2/3 of the college unions within and without the United States today. I wonder, however, how many of you know or have read those statements which delineate the role of the Association of College Unions. Without awaiting your answer, let me read these to you, if I may. Article 2 in the Constitution of the Association of College Unions, headed purpose, reads as follows. This association is organized and shall be operated not for profit and for exclusively educational purposes. It exists for the following reasons and for no other. A, to provide a medium through which representatives of member institutions may cooperate in advancing the educational interests of the institutions they represent. B, to encourage and assist colleges and universities in the planning and development of unions. C, to prepare and present materials and programs designed to assist in the educational and professional self-development of affiliate members. D, to encourage research designed to further develop the educational aims of the association and its members. Any activities not in themselves in furtherance of its educational purposes shall constitute an unsubstantial part of its total activities. The assets of this association are irrevocably dedicated to its educational purposes. The ACU was founded in 1914, 50 years ago, and this year we find ourselves midway through a golden anniversary year, inaugurated with the annual professional conference held last April on the campus of the University of Indiana in Bloomington. At that particular conference, we took a retrospective look at our first 50 years, and then, aided by distinguished representatives from the fields of education, sociology, business, and recreation, we looked beyond George Orwell to the year 2014. One of the interesting conclusions reached after that 50-year look ahead was that probably 50 years from now we shall still not have found a solution to the eternal problem of how to remove chewing gum from the carpet in the music room. The association maintains a central office on the campus of Cornell University. In response to a question directed to me last night over at Mr. Ackerman's home on Tiger Tail Road, you do not join this organization by sending 50 cents and your Dean of Women to Ithaca, New York. Though the central office does not as yet boast a full-time executive staff, the day is not far off when the ACU's present annual budget of $25,000 per year will increase markedly and will allow for such a staff, perhaps in Washington, D.C., as well as a field staff. Like many of its allied organizations, the ACU publishes a professional and informative journal, known in this case as the Bulletin of the Association, which is published and distributed 5 times each year. Again, like its sister groups, the ACU has established and maintains an employee placement service, which last year made some 822 job referrals to a large number of interested colleges and universities. Further, the ACU has established and maintains 11 regional libraries throughout the United States, containing complete microfilm records of its prior publications, bulletins, proceedings, and other invaluable documents and records. To execute the ever-growing workload of this college union society, an elaborate system of committees has evolved, which is operant throughout the year. I'd like to name all of these for you and to touch briefly on some of their more current and significant projects. I think in this way you'll get perhaps a better picture of the amount of work that the association indeed conducts on your behalf. The Product Exhibits Committee, which each year and in conjunction with the annual conference arranges exhibit booths designed to expose delegates to the very latest in a large variety of commercial services and equipment. The Artist Representatives Committee, which recently published a most helpful pamphlet suggesting ways to avoid various pitfalls inherent in dealing with booking agents. The Publicity and Public Relations Committee labors diligently to preserve and to perpetuate the educational image of the college union movement. International Relations, facing an unusually busy year in the face of the adoption of an international theme for the 1965 conference. With reference to that conference and with the help of the Asia Foundation, representatives from no fewer than 24 nations are expected to gather with us in San Francisco next April, primarily from the Near and Central East. The Committee on the Arts, which has prepared and distributed a number of important reference works pertaining to sources of materials that can readily and economically improve and strengthen your union fine arts program. Special Projects Committee, currently at work for you to find solutions to difficult problems now facing unions in certain regions, referable to film distributor policies and the attitudes of local theater proprietors. The Recreation Committee, formerly known as the Games Committee, a group that originally inaugurated and continues to promote a rather immense program of student competition in bowling, billiards, table tennis, bridge, and similar activities. Junior colleges. The existence of this highly special committee serves to reflect the ACU's recognition of and concern for the very important and unique mission of our junior colleges and the problems manifested in this special mission. The research committee, chaired by Dr. James C. Lyons at Haverford College in Pennsylvania, which last year assisted in the preparation of 16 master's theses and doctoral dissertations, all of which dealt exclusively with some phase of college union operations and/or college union programs. In certain instances, the assistance of the research committee included a cash research grant. The Inter-Association Committee, which works in consort and harmony with other educational organizations, such as the Association of the APGA, the Association of College and University Housing Officers, the Association of Foreign Student Advisors, and similar groups. This particular committee recently took the lead in developing, along with other organizations comprising the Council of Student Personnel Administrators, known generally as COSPA, the first phase in the adoption of a master's degree program designed for those individuals seeking a career in student personnel work. Finally, the Professional Development Committee, a group vitally concerned with the almost frightening fact that while, and as previously mentioned, there are some 700 unions in existence today, another 400 are due for completion in 10 years' time or less, and that leaders must be professionally developed and trained to work with students in directing these new buildings and these new union programs. The committee has instigated its own continuing education program, which began with a special seminar at the Harvard Business School in 1961, and which will be spotlighted again next April in San Francisco, when, and with the help of the National Training Laboratory from Bethel, Maine, they will conduct a 3.5 day series dealing with human relations. Departing from the committee structure and returning now to the work of the association as a whole, I would make passing reference to the ACU's instrumental role in dealing with the Housing and Home Finance Agency in Washington, D.C. Specifically, association leaders were successful some years back in convincing HHFA officials that unions, as well as residence halls and dining units, should be included in the federal government's long-term low-interest loan program. And I think those of you who have received the most recent issue of the bulletin have noted that the HHFA has again lowered the interest rate on borrowing for purposes of this type. In a similar vein, the ACU was successful in securing a substantial grant, in this case in excess of $40,000, from the Educational Facilities Laboratory, which is now being spent to underwrite the cost of a study dealing with planning union facilities for multiple use, and which is certain to save those institutions that have not yet erected a union a substantial amount of capital. Our success in obtaining this particular grant has led, at the August meeting of the Executive Committee, to a 3-month appointment of one of our own gifted officers, during which time, and while on special and paid leave from his own university, he will concentrate exclusively on obtaining the financial support of various foundations for other college union developmental projects. The goal of the Association of the College Union is identical to the goal of every college and university represented at this conference, and that goal, simply stated, is excellence. Certainly from the title of his address tonight, I suspect that UCLA's Dean Brugger has no intention of being as charitable to us as was Vice Chancellor Young last evening. However, we anticipate and invite his constructive criticism in the knowledge that the ACU encourages its members to regularly take a good look at the back of their necks and to keep always in front of them the vital question Dr. Young raised last night, to wit, are we truly attempting to reach our goal of developing persons as well as intellects? Thank you very much.
I have two brief notes. At 4 o'clock, I'd like to again remind you that there is a tour type analysis, not a tour, it was a wrong word, an in-depth analysis of the student union. The meeting will be at the information desk on the first floor, 4 o'clock. Also, I believe there's a misconception concerning the site of the dinner tonight. I've heard this just sort of a rumor type. It's the Bel Air Hotel. It is in no way connected with the Bel Air Sands Motel. They're two different units completely. The dinner will be held at the Bel Air Hotel consult your brochure for the times that the buses leave. Yes? I can't hear you, sir. I believe so. It hasn't been corrected as to my knowledge yet. The times are corrected as stated. Are there any other questions? If none, we'll break now, and then sessions will start at 2:30. Thank you.